Welcome to the Seeing Red podcast with Andy Turner and Garrett Fools, checking up on Texas policies and politics with some federal issues thrown in, like the assault weapons ban, interest rate hikes, you get it, but it's mostly Texas, since we can't ignore the big stuff either. And now, here are your hosts, Andy Turner and Garrett Fools.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Seeing Red. We're glad to have you all with us. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether it's on YouTube or on seeingredpodcast.com, or if you're listening to this as a podcast, we're glad to have you. You can find us on facebook.com/the Seeing Red Pod. YouTube is youtube.com/Seeing Red Pod. You can hit us up at Twitter at the Seeing Red Pod, and you can go to seeingredpodcast.com and either fill out the little form and we'll answer you, or you can email us directly, hosts, HOSTS, at seeingredpodcast.com. I promise you that is the email that we read. And we have a special guest back with us today, one of my favorite people, Representative Jared Patterson. He is from House District 106, Denton County, City of Frisco. And I just found out today that a very good friend of mine used to live in Frisco. So we were having like way back machines on that. Jared has been in the House for a couple terms now, and he works in the energy fields sector. And if you did not hear him on our show talking about the electrical grid and what needs to happen and what doesn't need to happen and what silliness is going on there and what serious stuff is going on there, please go back to the podcast or to the website and tune in, because wow, was that an education. And what I love about Representative Patterson is, and I said this on the other show, but it bears repeating, I knew I liked this man when I met him. He was charming and outgoing, as most good legislators are. I went to his Twitter and he said, "I'm conservative, but I'm not mad about it." And I was like, this is a guy I can get behind. So I that was the greatest tag ever. So Representative Patterson, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thrilled to have you. I noticed on Twitter yesterday you wrote an article or a letter to the editor to the Dallas Morning News, and it got printed, and I read part of it because behind the screen I can't read all of it, and I went, oh, we need to talk about this. So Representative Patterson, I'm gonna let you start wherever you like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you both for having me on again. I think that this cycle, I don't have a primary opponent, so I can kind of take a step back and look at this situation through kind of a different lens. And I'm looking at what's going on around the state. And this cycle, more than any other, I am seeing an incredible amount of just lies, just downright lies about the records of my colleagues. And it's sickening because you've got all of these groups that have been created to try to trick voters into convincing people that, legislators who banned abortion in Texas, who passed constitutional carry in Texas, who, put the strongest election integrity laws, the strongest border security laws in the nation, the largest property tax cut in the nation, that they are somehow less than or not conservative, or that they have just downright done stuff that they haven't done. And so, I'm trying to call that out as much as I possibly can for each and every one of my colleagues, because we should be able to have a policy debate and a policy discussion and agree or disagree on policy, but we can't have our own sets of facts. And unfortunately, that's what I'm seeing in a lot of these mail pieces and text campaigns and ads on social media, television, and radio these days.
Well, thank you for writing that op-ed, for one. Kind of before we get into the heart and meat of the op-ed, I think that the initial criticism of it that I saw was that you published it in the Dallas Morning News, which, if anyone knows what an op-ed is, it just means you wrote something that is your voice, whatever else. They just published it. So I've always thought that was a little disingenuous, that because it's not the Dallas Morning News. They disavow anything that's in the op-ed section. They just publish it because it's newsworthy. And obviously, if you're saying something about this right now, it is newsworthy. Do you want to add anything to that before we get into the meat of it, or do you think that kind of explains it well enough?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's funny. The Dallas Morning News, I think that they may have endorsed me in the last cycle when kind of a crazy far left Democrat was running against me. But they've endorsed against me multiple times. This had nothing to do, obviously, with the Dallas Morning News, and in fact, other newspapers across the region and across the state are publishing and running with this as well, because it cuts to the heart of the problem, which is this money coming in through what was the Defend Texas Liberty PAC before they changed their name after their almost 7-hour meeting with a Nazi Holocaust denier. So they changed their name to Texans United for a Conservative Majority, and then their splinter cell of organizations throughout the state of Texas with conservative sounding names like Texans for Strong Borders or Texas Gun Rights or Texans for Vaccine Choice or Texas Family Project, or whatever it may be. They have conservative sounding names, yet their only goal, I call them the anti-Republicans. Their only goal in this whole scenario is to make money. They make money when people run for office, and then they get to send mail pieces and texts and all that into these districts. They get a cut of all of that. And so ultimately, the issue here is not the conservative record of our House incumbents who have done more than any other legislative body in the country. The issue is one of greed and of money and of trying to trick voters so that they can make a buck.
Well, if they win an election, it actually goes against the business model, because then they can't run the same tactics they're used to, right?
Well, look, that's why it's been so nasty, over the last cycle. Look, let's be honest. Under Speaker Phelan's leadership, since he became Speaker of the Texas House 2 cycles ago, we have taken abortions from 50,000 abortions a year in Texas to 34 abortions per year. Not 34,000.
34,000?
34. The number 34.
Double digits.
We have gone, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've taken, constitutional carry. We passed that bill, making sure that you don't have to ask the government's permission to keep and bear arms in the state for the first time since Reconstruction. We passed such a strong election integrity bill that the Democrats fled the state to try to stop it. He issued arrest warrants for them to bring them back.
I remember that, yes.
That was in 21. I mean, we've got issue after issue. Protecting kids, we banned child gender modification and the drugs, the hormone-changing drugs on children. We banned being able to take children to these explicit drag shows. We banned these pornographic books from our public schools. All of these things that we've done to protect children, all these legacy conservative wins have happened just in the last 2 cycles since Speaker Phelan took office. And these groups are more outraged than ever because it hurts the business model.
Well, it isn't just those groups that are going after the incumbents. You also have the apparatus of the official party, Republican Party of Texas, namely the chairman, Matt Rinaldi, and then a large number of the executive committee going after Dade Phelan and a number of other incumbents for reasons that seem to pass understand or don't make any sense.
No, it makes no sense. Again, with that record, the most conservative speaker in the history of the Texas House and the most conservative agenda in the nation that we have put, the largest property tax cut in the history of the United States, the strongest border security bill in the nation, the highest amount of funding ever appropriated in the history of the United States by a state to build the wall, to put the razor wire, to put the buoys, to pay for the National Guard. You look at issue after issue after issue. All of this has happened since Dade Phelan became speaker, yet he is the enemy of Matt Rinaldi, who chairs the Republican Party of Texas, because Matt Rinaldi is paid to be against the Texas House. Matt Rinaldi is paid to create this division between the House and the Senate, say House bad, Senate good. Take a look at the property tax debate that we had this session. Again, we passed the largest property tax cut in the United States history, expanded the homestead exemption from $40,000 to $100,000. We also bought down the property tax rates by 10.7 cents. Governor Abbott's initial plan, the Texas House's initial plan, and the RPT platform says we want to eliminate property taxes. So what our plan was to put all of the money toward buying down the rates, buying down property tax rates, so we could come back session after session and buy down those rates. The Senate said no, we want to expand the homestead exemption as part of that, and we negotiated a deal there. The Texas House was the first body to pass $100,000 homestead, but the House wanted, Matt Rinaldi opposed, and the RPT opposed what we wanted, which flies in direct conflict with the party platform, which states we want to eliminate property taxes, not give a higher exemption. We want to eliminate property taxes. And that's what our plan was. That's what Governor Abbott's plan was.
So I want to ask you, because I want to make sure, A, I understand you, and B, get you to expand on that. Did I understand you correctly when you said Matt Rinaldi is paid to be anti-House effectively? And if I understood that correctly, tell me how that works. He's supposed to lead all Republicans, right? And being chairman of the RPT is not, I'm not sure, but is not a paid position, right? He has an outside.
It is now, but that's not the payment that I'm talking about. He holds board positions, for these guys that are funding this disinformation campaign. It is in Matt Rinaldi's best interest to oppose Republicans in the Texas House. It makes his buddies, like his best friend, Jonathan Stickland and Luke Macias, it makes them more money whenever they, have more candidates that file for office to run against incumbent Republicans. Jonathan Stickland, the one that met for nearly 7 hours with Nick Fuentes when Matt Rinaldi was in the same very small square footage office space during that time of that meeting, and has refused to comment on that meeting and why it took place. It's what forced Defend Texas Liberty PAC to change their name. It's what forced Pale Horse Strategies, which was Jonathan Stickland's consulting firm, to change their name to West Fort Worth Management. That's where the dollars flow through. And that's how they earn money through this, is by flowing money through those organizations. But again, Matt Rinaldi specifically, he serves on boards that these folks who are funding this stuff, he serves on boards for their companies. He's paid directly as a sitting board member or as an attorney for these folks who, as their side gig, fund Defend Texas Liberty PAC and all these other organizations.
Yeah, that's a direct conflict. As an attorney, you have to represent your client's interests. You're ethically bound to. And I've never accused Matt Rinaldi of having ethics, but I'm sure he likes to keep his his professional licensure. So, he's ethically bound and legally bound to a certain degree to maintain that interest. And I just don't understand how he can take the money, how he can be paid by the Wilkes companies and then take their money pretty much exclusively, the Duns and the Wilkes monies exclusively to run the party, and then say he's not in their pocket. He's literally taking their paycheck.
Look, when you vote to oust and when you endorse against the sitting speaker that has led the most conservative agenda in the history of the United States, then your goals are not policy based. Your goals are not principled in conservative policy. That's not their goal. That's not the goal of these groups. Texas Gun Rights, Texas Family Project, Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, they are sending mailers out to incumbent Republican districts that are lying to voters about their record. We passed like a dozen pro Second Amendment. I talk a lot about constitutional carry. We also made Texas a Second Amendment sanctuary state. We made sure that no executive of the government, governor all the way down, could ever close a gun store, an ammo store, or a church for that matter. We have done more for the Second Amendment than any legislative body in the nation since Dade Phelan became speaker, yet Texas Gun Rights opposes Dade Phelan. We have done more to protect children from the radical woke agenda, to save women's sports from male competitors, 7th grade through college, protecting kids from drag shows and pornographic books. We have done all these things, yet Texas Family Project opposes Speaker Dade Phelan and other Republican incumbents. We have done all of these things. Again, the strongest border security legislation, the highest amount of funding to build a wall. Texas has more wall built or under construction in Texas than Donald Trump built when he was president. Yet Texans for Strong Borders opposes Dade Phelan and House incumbent Republicans. This is not about policy. It is a business model. And conservative policy going through the Texas House is bad for business when your business is convincing people that the Texas House is not conservative.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
go ahead.
I think that you hit the nail on the head there, because you have these groups, and it's not that hard to form. I think they're 501c4s, and then
That's
they
right.
don't have, and then or they might have an affiliated PAC or whatever, and they don't have to file their disclosures, their financial disclosures, nearly as often. What sort of mechanism can the legislature pass from like a public accountability standpoint? Because you can't stop people from going into the public square and lying. It's actually one that you're allowed to do that under the First Amendment. It's not, it's crappy, but they have a constitutional right to lie as much as they want about whomever.
Yeah.
When it comes to public officials. That said, we do have laws in place that allow us to kind of monitor who's funding it and where that money's coming from, where it's going. What sort of legislation do you think we might see going forward to kind of help the public be more aware of who is funding these organizations?
Well, we are in desperate need of some ethics reforms. You know, the Texas Ethics Commission might as well not even exist. You know, they do nothing, proactively on any of these things. You know, the mailer that Texans for Fiscal Responsibility set out to a lot of districts about how legislators raised their pension this last session, which didn't happen at all, hasn't happened in more than a decade, hasn't happened, in fact, since most of these people were even in the legislature, because 2013 was the last time that happened. But they sent out a mailer saying that, that incumbent Republicans raised their pension last session. They didn't put a disclaimer on it. You have to say political advertisement paid for by Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. They had a return address on it, but they didn't have a disclaimer. And it's the same thing from all of these fake groups. You see it because it's all run through the same print shop at Defend Texas Liberty PAC or Texans United for Conservative Reform or Majority or whatever they're called now. They change their name every cycle. But they run them all through the same. They've got a template and they don't have any type of political disclaimer on it. Voters need to know who is paying for this stuff. I'll give you another example. We are in desperate need of ethics reform when it comes to these text messages that are sent out or these influenceable. You saw this a lot during the Paxton trial where these internet celebrities were tweeting pro-Paxton tweets and retweeting all of this fake garbage about the Paxton situation that none of it was true, but they were paid to tweet that stuff. That should have to come with a political disclaimer of who is paying for that, because that's not just you expressing your independent opinion as a free American. You're getting paid to offer a political statement, which if it were on a mail piece or anything else, that's why you hear political ad paid for by so-and-so, or my name's Jeff Leach and I approve this ad or whatever on the radio. You hear that because it's required by law. So we're in desperate need of some ethics reforms. Again, you can say whatever you want to say, but voters should be able to know who's paying for it.
Exactly, who's paying for it. And to hire a celebrity to basically read words, that's acting, that's making a movie. They're getting paid. So this doesn't really mean that they may not even know what they're talking about. But here's $50,000. Read these words.
Right.
I remember when this all came out and I was like, wait, you don't live here. You don't know anything about this state. And I'm still learning about this state. That I've been here almost 5 years now, and there's lots to learn about Texas, lots. And I love it. And I'm learning every day. But like, if you've never set foot in this state or you don't live here, you can't appreciate. I was having a conversation recently, and I won't say with whom, and I was trying to explain, this person is from New York, and I was trying to explain that border issues here feel very different than they do where that person lives. And so when you're, and this person who is a Harvard graduate wanted to talk about, immigration as a world issue. And I'm like, right, but I literally had a job where I was told, if you have to go do speaking down at the border, you are taking not one, but two board members with you because you're a woman and scary things happen down there. So it's good. It's good that you have your LTC and you know how to use it, but you're not going alone. And I was like, get out. Because coming here from, someplace else, you don't hear that stuff.
Well, and look, these candidates have done more. You know, you look at Kronda Timish in Denton County, or Lynn Stuckey in Denton County, or Matt Shaheen, Candy Noble, Jeff Leake, Frederick Frazier in Collin County, or Reggie Smith in Grayson County, or Dwayne Burns or Justin Holland, Stephanie Click, Morgan Meyer, all of these members from the Metroplex. We are far away from the border geographically. I mean, not as much as someone from New York. But each one of those members understands that all 254 counties in Texas are border counties. We all have fentanyl coming across into our districts. We all see the human trafficking. We all see the crime that is going up in our communities. We all see the people that are coming across this border, 300 of which have been on the terror watch list. And each one of these members has sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution and laws of this state. And they've done that to record amounts, so much so that no other state in the nation has ever come close to the amount of work that we have done on border security issues, helping Governor Abbott with Operation Lone Star, getting him the resources he needs, putting billions of dollars aside to build border barriers, and to have the National Guard, the State Guard, and our DPS troopers down there. Yet again, these members are called rhinos, and they're called less than because these groups who want to make money off of campaigns, who, mind you, won't be there in November when we're challenging Democrats to hold on to our seats. You won't hear from these groups in November, but you're hearing from now because they're going to make a lot of cash on 45 contested House races.
Well, one of the other issues they're talking about is Democrat chairs. In Texas House, there are chairs that are chairmanships of different committees that are held by Democrats.
Yeah.
What is the reason for that? Why are there Democrat chairs?
Yeah. Look, I don't like the fact that we've got Democrat chairs, but I understand why we do. And why, and look, and here's the other thing on this whole thing, again, getting back to these groups and how they make money. All these folks that listen to these groups, they know that there are Democrat chairmen in the Texas House. And they are shocked to learn that every Republican lieutenant governor that we've ever had, in every single legislative session that they have ever presided over, have also had Democrat chairs. But our constituents aren't told that. They're only told that the Texas House has Democrat chairs. Look, Dade Phelan reduced the number from 13 Democrat chairs to 8 Democrat chairs. We are, in a position now to lessen, the chairman, but, we're in a situation where we've got 86 Republicans as of last session, 83 Republicans my first 2 sessions, when 76 is a majority in the Texas House. And so, there is a very thin majority. We don't have a 2/3 majority like they've operated most of the time in the Texas Senate in recent years. We have a very slim, sometimes a 55% majority. And there are lesser committees that no conservative policy goes before. I mean, you can't point to a single conservative policy that was stopped by Democrat chairman because Democrats don't control any of those committees. But you do have committees like Water and Roads that have Democrat chairs now. Again, I wish that we didn't have Democrat chairs, but I recognize, that we do. And, not every issue is a red versus blue issue. When you're talking about a rural Republican, they would probably much rather have Tracy King, who is a rural Democrat from Uvalde, chair the Water Committee than someone like me in the DFW Metroplex, a conservative Republican from the DFW Metroplex, because you know what I want to do with all that water that's out in East Texas? I want to bring it into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So if I'm a rural Republican from East Texas, it's better for me to have Tracy King of Uvalde than Jared Patterson of Frisco. And that's just the bottom line of how some of these issues are more urban versus rural than they are R versus D. And so, Dade Phelan's done a great job as speaker. He's reduced the number of Democrat chairmen. But, this is a practice that every single legislative session, every Republican lieutenant governor and every Republican speaker has had to date Democrat chairman during the legislative session.
I've seen some reasons why that might be the case. And one of them is just the fact that you have to get 100 votes to get a constitutional amendment. You can't have tax cuts without having Democrat chairs because you
Right.
can't get it across. You can't get any of the, or the most of the constitutional amendments.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. I mean, look, the folks that want us to operate more like Washington, D.C., I always turn that around and say, name 3 conservative wins that have happened in the last 20 or 30 years out of Washington, D.C. under one party rule. Yet in the Texas House, it does take 100 votes. If you like your cost of living adjustment, if you're a retired teacher, if you like your property tax cut where we expanded the homestead exemption from 40,000 to 100,000, those were constitutional amendments in the state of Texas. To get those, it requires 100 votes to get on the ballot. It takes 2/3 in each body. And guess what? We don't have 100 Republicans. They used to in the Texas House. And what's crazy is that we have accomplished more with 86 Republicans than they did when there were 100 or 95 Republicans in the Texas House. And it's all because of our speaker, Dade Phelan, putting conservatives in a position to have a strong say of what happens in the Texas House.
So let me ask you about this election versus, and you've been in many elections. I've been in many elections, but not all here.
Yes.
But you've been involved in many elections, even before you were a representative.
Yes.
Is this as, to me, this seems just vitriolic. I mean,
It is.
I've never seen a primary like this, and I've been involved in some nasty primaries.
Yes.
How does this compare to your lifetime, your political lifetime experience?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've been involved for a long time. And in my 20s, I served on a local city council. I was a Republican precinct chair for 3 terms. I was a delegate to the state convention of the Republican Party of Texas back when we had thousands of people actually go to those instead of 12 or 1,500. I've been involved for a very long time in the party and now running for my 4th term in the Texas House. And so I've even, despite my age, I've been involved for quite a while. And you're right. I mean, the vitriol, the hatred is higher now than it's ever been before. And that's one of the reasons I'm standing up to start to fight back on this, not because of, how ticked off I am, and I am about the lies this time, but also of where this thing could possibly be heading in the future if people don't start to stand up and to fight back on it, because it is so sour right now. It's so disheartening to see all the lies and everything that are being promoted. And I think it's because we're coming off of the 2 most conservative sessions in history. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but this all goes back to the business model. A conservative Texas House is bad for business when your business is convincing people that the Texas House is not conservative. And so the more legacy wins that we have, again, abortion, people fought for 50 years to end abortion after Roe v. Wade passed. People fought since Reconstruction to have gun rights and not have to ask the government's permission to keep and bear arms. We accomplished legacy wins in the state of Texas, and the attacks have only gotten harsher as a result, because that's bad for business.
So that's
one last thing before we let you go is you also kind of touched a little bit on how the Paxton impeachment vote and Paxton's subsequent actions have kind of permeated through this primary as well. What are your thoughts on Senator Springer's call to at least relook at the impeachment now that Paxton has, or his office at the very least, has given up the defense of the civil whistleblower case?
Yeah, I mean, look, I completely agree. I don't know if logistically if that works. I don't know how you bring it back up. I don't know really how that works logistically. But what I'll say is that now that Ken Paxton has, basically admitted to 4 of the impeachment articles, to breaking the Texas Whistleblower Act, a law which is put into place so that powerful politicians are held accountable if they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing. If my staff goes to the FBI and says, hey, this guy's doing some illegal stuff here, I can't fire them the next day or 45 days later. They have to be protected during that time period, because, or else our elected officials could be the most corrupt people ever, and no one would ever say anything about it, because these people's livelihoods are at stake if they do. Yeah. So, he has admitted to breaking the Texas Whistleblower Act. He's admitted to 4 of the impeachment articles, 4 of the 20 now. But what's ironic is that the linchpin of the Whistleblower Act and the whistleblower's actions going to the FBI also highlights around 10 of the other impeachment offenses, which relate to this Nate Paul and the apparent or alleged bribes and other things that he did, turning over his office to Nate Paul and then, allegedly accepting bribes in response to that. So I think that absolutely something needs to happen there. I don't know if something's going to happen through the legislature. The noose is getting tighter around the neck of the Attorney General. That's what you have to understand. In April, he's facing life in prison on securities fraud charges from 2015. That is finally going to come to trial. He tried to get that thrown out, and the judge said, absolutely not. We're going to proceed with the trial. He has this whistleblower lawsuit. He tried to say, look, I did it. I broke the Whistleblower Act. I just don't bring me in to answer any questions under oath. Give them however much money they want from the taxpayers. That was Ken Paxton's take. That lawsuit is ongoing. There are, the FBI is investigating him on, my belief is on, bribery and abuse of office charges. That's my understanding. And so I know that they're interviewing people all over Austin, about that. So he faces a litany of problems, legal problems, and the entire focus of the Office of the Attorney General is how to protect Ken Paxton from answering any questions under oath whatsoever. And it ought to be focused on actually winning lawsuits. It's great that he sues the Biden administration, but let's actually win some of those lawsuits. Let's defend the conservative bills that we passed this session, like My Reader Act, when we had such a poor showing at the Fifth Circuit. I'm not even convinced that the Attorney General's office had even read the Reader Act. It's only 10 pages. They are losing talent out of their office. We need them focused on what's best for the people of Texas, not focused on protecting Ken Paxton from answering questions under oath.
Yeah, anyone can file a lawsuit. It takes some actual legal acumen to win a lawsuit. And under Ken Paxton, it feels like we're losing a lot. He lost the border one, where now we have this confrontation at the border where he should have won that case. And so far, the Reader Act has been held up as it goes through the system. Probably should have won that one as well, because like you said, the Texas legislature is passing legacy wins, massive conservative victories, and now we need an attorney general that will go out and fight and win to make sure that those hold up to federal scrutiny. And he's not doing the job that he's claiming to be doing. On top of that, he's corrupt as hell.
Yeah.
It's infuriating.
I mean, my whole problem is, why are you spending so much time? And Garrett, check me on this, or Representative. I think I read that he just went back to court over the 9-year-old state SEC court case and said, you need to toss this court case out because my right to speedy trial I didn't get that. And if I understand it correctly, the judge said, yeah, that's because of your own filings.
Right. Oh, yeah. They've delayed, just like they've done on this Whistleblower Act. I mean, this has been going on for years, and he's got all these delay tactics. And I would ask you, if the average citizen in Texas, the average worker in Frisco or in Dallas or in Sanger or Pilot Point in my district, if they would have the same opportunity to delay the charges brought against them for, practically a decade through court maneuvering, but the Attorney General gets to, and he gets to have the full scope of his office working every single day to protect him from answering any questions under oath. It is a disgusting perversion of what we're supposed to do as elected office holders. And I hope that he's brought to justice soon.
Okay. My last question, and I'll let Andi ask her last if she has one. My last question is, Ken Paxton has gone out of his way to make most of these House races a referendum on whether or not he should have been impeached.
Yeah.
If he's unsuccessful in primarying these people, should the House come back and impeach him again, given that he's now admitted all the stuff that he's admitted?
Yeah, I mean, look, first off, I think he won't be very successful at all. I think that if you look at it, that is not moving people. People care about the border. They care about the economy. They care about education. They care about the things that we've done as a legislature to protect their children from the radical woke agenda. Governor Abbott has shown remarkable leadership. on the border, and he's turned this into a national discussion on border security, something the media went kicking and screaming before they would even pay any attention whatsoever to it. So those are the things that I think that the voters care about. When I'm out knocking doors, and I've done so in Speaker Phelan's district, I've done so in Chronic Timmons' district, and others around the state of Texas, people want to talk about those issues. They don't care about, the attorney general. And if you look at it, I think that the representatives that are in the most trouble, this cycle from all the attacks and all that, aren't even the Collin County representatives. Sometimes having a high name ID like Ken Paxton has in Collin County actually works against you, because they've known him and they've known what he is for a very long time. And so, look, I think that he's going to be blanked out on most of these races. And I think by chance, the ones that he has endorsed, the challenger that actually wins, I think that it's going to be for very different reasons than Ken Paxton and his saga of drama.
I agree. The last thing before we wrap up, is there where can people find more information about you? I know you don't have a primary election, or you are up for re-election. Is there anywhere people can find stuff about you?
Well, look, I take great pride in our website, jaredpatterson.net. That website contains not an exclusive write-up, but a lot of detail about the conservative policy that I've been a part of since I joined the Texas House. And so if you want to look at Second Amendment rights, or pro-life policy, or protecting our children, or a litany of other issues, about a dozen different issue policy areas, we have write-ups that talk through legislation on each one of those. Probably the most comprehensive write-up on bills that we pass in the legislature at jaredpatterson.net. You can also donate there, and you can follow me on Twitter at Jared L. Patterson, or on Facebook at JPattersonTX. But would love to connect with conservatives around the state who are conservative but aren't mad about it.
Well done.
Thank you, Representative Patterson, and thank you to the viewers and to the listeners at home, whether you're listening on YouTube or on the audio podcast. We thank you so much. Make sure you're following us on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts at the Seeing Red Pod on all socials. Go ahead and follow the podcast so you get the latest updates on when we're going to have a new episode or whatever else. We do have a scheduled episode. We just love to see you and have you follow us. But until then, and thank you again, Jared Patterson. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
You've been listening to the Seeing Red podcast. It's always Texas politics and beyond. We present the facts and opinions. The Seeing Red podcast with your host, Andy Turner and Garrett Fools. Thank you, and tune in next week. And please do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.